Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX3, and EX3 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And even though this deck isn't going to be utilizing any EX3 specific cards, it's still a pretty fun deck that you could play casually in the EX3 environment. And that's going to be Green Armor Rush. So Green Armor Rush is exactly as it sounds. It is a Armor Rush based deck utilizing the Green Armor Digimon. Then we do have some pretty fun and powerful DNA plays that we can make, and plays to want to go up into our higher stages. Whether that's going to be going from our 4s to our 5s and our 5s to our 6s doesn't necessarily matter. It's just a deck that has lots of really good high synergy. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 5 Digitamas because we are more of an aggressive base deck, so we're going to be trying to move out of raising as often as we possibly can, because armored Digimon have the armor purge ability, allowing us to try to actually keep a Digimon on the field. So the 5th Digi-Egg for this deck, it could really be anything you want it to be. I'm going to be running 1 copy of Tanemon just because we are going to be Digivolving quite a lot, and Tanemon can take advantage of the fact that we Digivolved by giving our Digimon some extra DP to be playing around with when we attack with it. But for the most part, the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gummymon, just because Gummymon is one of the better cards that we have to try to help us draw cards. If you want to try to use a Pinamon in its place, by all means do so. I just find the fact that Gummimon's inheritable ability triggers when we suspend an opponent's Digimon is a little bit easier than attacking into the opponent's Digimon, because sometimes the opponent might not give us that opportunity. And then as far as the extra Digimon that don't necessarily have any levels, I am going to be running 2 copies of Calumon, just because a lot of our level 3 Digimon are going to be Terriermons, just to try to make use of Rapidmon a little bit easier. So the fact that Calumon can help us gain some memory, gain some DP, and draw cards is just really, really good, while being an easy card to use in combination with our Terriermons. And then speaking of our Terriermons, next on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Terriermon. So this is the BT3 version of Terriermon, and this is a really good card just because it also doubles as a floodgate to try to stop the opponent's memory manipulating shenanigans on anything but their tamers. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of the BT8 Terriermon. So this is just another stereotypical digger, more specifically looking for our Rapidmons, which we are running a Rapidmon in the deck because, well, we do have a level 4 armor-based Rapidmon. And then I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the EX2 Terriermon, just because we do have some capability to gain memory off of its passive ability that it has native to it with green tamers. And then on top of that, its inheritable ability is pretty useful for when, again, we're suspending Digimon, which, because of how Rapidmon wants to work, isn't necessarily the hardest thing in the world to be able to give us some extra DP. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be a flex spot, so it could really be anything you feel like you want it to be, but I'm going to be dedicating it to 3 copies of Wormmon, just because Wormmon enables our DNA plays. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Rapidmon. So this is the BT8 level 4 version of Rapidmon, and he evolves a little bit more efficiently and cheaper off of our Terriermons, which is why we want to run a lot of Terriermons on our low end. Then he comes with the armor purge ability built in for some added protection for when the opponent is trying to delete our Digimon. We still get to try to attempt to keep a Digimon on the field depending on how they're going to be deleting our Digimon, if they even can. Then he has a nice ability when we Digivolve up into him to be able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon for each tamer we have in play, and then up to 3 of the opponent's suspended Digimon get minus 5,000 DP for the turn. So this is just a very strong card to be able to deal with not only wide boards, but we could use it to try to attack it into larger bodies, just because of all of the different inheritables that we could have in him, and the combination of his naturally high DP for a level 4 and the minus 5,000 on the opponent's Digimon, and because Armor Purge, even at worst if we crash, will still be able to keep a Digimon body on the field. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Shurimon. So Shurimon, even though we're not running any Hawkmons in the deck, we could still Digivolve them for 3 on top of green level 3 Digimon, which is a little bit less efficient, but that's okay just because we're going to be making up for it in strides based on all of the color-based synergies that we have going on in the deck. So he has a nice when Digivolving ability when we actually do go up into him to basically try to shut the opponent's ability off from being able to block our attacks. So he's a pseudo unblockable Digimon while also being an armor based Digimon for our armor synergies and having the armor purge ability built in all in one card. And then the last champion I'm going to be running in the deck is going to be 2 copies of Digmon. So like Shurimon, we're not running the Digimon that it wants to play with in order to make Digivolving into this card as cheap and efficient as we possibly could. So we're just going to be settling for Digivolving him for 3 on top of any of our green level 3s. Then on top of the fact of him already being a 2-color Digimon, he has a nice built-in armor purge protection ability that's on all of our other armor form Digimon. And he has a nice when attacking ability where one of the opponent's suspended Digimon gets minus 3000 DP, so even though he's not as strong as Rapidmon, he still has his own sets of uses. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of RizeGreymon. So even though RizeGreymon is a red Digimon, we do have the consistency on all of our level 4s to be able to Digivolve up into them when we want to, just because all of our level 4s are either part red or part yellow, even though they all stem from green. So he also is going to be treated as a yellow Digimon while he's on the field. So while he's in the raising area or in our hand, then he's still going to be counted as red. So you do have to keep in mind that part of the ability. Then on top of that, the main reason why we're trying to use this card is to be able to help set up our Tamers and play our Tamers as efficiently as we possibly can because of his Digiburst 2 ability. So trashing 2 of his inheritable sources to be able to play one of our red or yellow Tamers for free, which is pretty decent already because we have some really powerful good ones and we want to make sure that we could set them up to be able to make our deck as efficient as we possibly can. Then he himself has a nice inheritable ability for our higher stage Digimon to use of when attacking, if we have a Tamer in play, then one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 2000 DP for the turn. So we're already playing a little bit into DP reduction, so he's just continuing that trend. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Silphymon. So Silphymon, like RizeGreymon, can utilize all of our level 4s just because, again, all of our level 4s are part red or part yellow to take full advantage of this card. So them being armor Digimon make them a little bit harder for the opponents to get rid of, so that's what's allowing us to try to line up our DNA plays, and the fact that we have Wormmon to enable our DNA plays just make playing a card like this even easier. And we want to play a card like this just because it actually has a pretty decent removal ability built into it, where when we Digivolve up into it, one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 5000 DP, then if we DNA'd, we get to delete a Digimon on the opponent's field that's 5000 DP or less. So it's just a good card to try to be able to deal with either a wide field or try to delete a single big Digimon because we have multiple different ways to be able to try to DP reduce it down to put it in range of deletion based ability when we DNA into it. Then it has a nice inheritable ability that's helping us try to have some good recursive control where when we attack with our higher stage Digimon, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon that's 5000 DP or less, which is actually pretty strong of a removal ability for our level 6s to be playing with. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Kimeramon. So if you want to play around with the level 5 ratios to try to favor Kimeramon just because he is a very easy and very powerful card to use, by all means do so. This is just what I settled and ended up with just because I do like having the versatility on having all of the different Digimon that we could be playing around with in our ultimate slot. But Kimeramon is a very powerful and easy card for this deck to use just because we're already playing with a lot of different colors, and Kimeramon is rewarded for playing with a lot of different colors just because he can DNA Digivolve or normally Digivolve off of any color. So DNAing, we just need to set up 2 level 4 Digimon, which again isn't necessarily the hardest thing in the world because of the armor purge ability, allowing us to try to keep our Digimon on the field. Then when we do actually Digivolve up into him, then we get to place 1 level 5 or lower card from our trash to the bottom of his Digivolution sources, which is pretty good because we have a couple of decent inheritable abilities. We actually do want to try to line up with Kimeramon. Then on top of that, up to 4 of the opponent's Digimon get minus 1000 DP for each of this Digimon's colors until the end of the opponent's next turn, which we're already playing with DP reduction, so it's another really good instance of DP reduction to try to control and limit the opponent's actions. So this is just a really good card because we are having access at 4 colors to be able to DP reduce the opponent's Digimon by a lot. So we have access to red, we have access to yellow, we have access to green, and Kimeramon will count himself as white as well when we're utilizing him because his secondary ability states that this Digimon gets treated as all of the colors in his Digivolution source, and if he has 4 or more colors, then he gains plus 4000 DP, so he's just a very aggressive level 5 Digimon for us to be utilizing in the deck. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Dinorexmon. So because all of our Digimon on our level 5 slots, for the most part, are part red, Dinorexmon is just a very easy card for us to use, and even if they're not part red, well, some of them might be part green as well. So for Digivolving up into Dinorexmon, for each tamer that we have in play, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down and gain a memory. So the deck does reward us for playing with a decent amount of tamers, and this ability does trigger and combo with some of our various other cards that interact with suspending the opponent's Digimon down. Then during all turns, once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less becomes suspended, then we get to delete that Digimon for some good recursive removal, and this basically shuts off a lot of low-level aggression, which is pretty decent, whether we're suspending the opponent's Digimon and applying DP reduction ourselves, or the opponent is swinging and attacking with low-level Digimon. It doesn't necessarily matter. He could be just a very good defensive card for us to use. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Magnamon X Antibody. So Magnamon X Antibody, we don't necessarily need the X Antibody option for him to work, just because all of our level 4s are going to be Armor Form Digimon. So even though we don't necessarily have the Magnamon to make him a little bit more efficient to use in terms of trying to get up into him as quickly as we possibly can, we still can use him in the deck just because all of our level 5 Digimon are going to be part yellow in some capacity, just thanks to how the color spread works in the deck. Then what we're trying to do is take advantage of his offensively defensive abilities to be able to redirect the opponent's attack into him, and he even has a nice all turns ability that's acting like a pseudo armor purge, except better because instead of him going to the trash, he's going to be going into our security to help us recover and set up himself as a good security threat that the opponent might have to deal with. So it's just a really good card for us to use in the deck as a result. Then on to the tamers, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Hiro. So Hiro is going to be the memory setting tamer, so that way we could try to always have our memory be at 3 to make our plays as efficient as we possibly can. And then on top of that, he's going to be a really good card to interact with our level 5 and higher Digimon by giving them some extra DP when we swing with them. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Cody. So Cody is going to help us gain some additional memory just because as long as we have a yellow Digimon in play, which a lot of our higher stage Digimon are part yellow, then we're going to be gaining an extra memory. Then he has a nice secondary ability that's adding some extra control into the deck. When one of our Digimon with 2 or more colors, doesn't even specify what the colors have to be, they just need to have 2 or more attacks, then we get to suspend this tamer to give one of the opponent's Digimon minus 2000 DP for the turn for some more added DP reduction to be able to extend the reach of what we're able to DP reduce and delete in the deck. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of TK and Izzy. So TK and Izzy, again, like Hiro, is just trying to play around with the fact that we're going to want to have level 5 or higher Digimon on our field. So for the opponent having one, we get to gain 1 memory, and for us having one, we also get to gain 1 memory. So most of the time, we're always going to be at worst gaining 1 memory off of this card at the start of our main phase. Then its secondary ability is similar to Cody's, where it's just adding some extra DP reduction. For when our yellow or green Digimon digivolves, then we get to suspend this tamer to have one of the opponent's Digimon gain minus 1000 DP until the end of the opponent's turn for more DP reduction goodness. Then lastly, onto the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Lightning Joust. So Lightning Joust is going to be a good DP booster that's also trying to help us deal as much damage as we possibly can, just allowing us to try to give our Digimon security attack +1 as long as our security is less than the opponent's, but at worst this card is always just going to be giving our Digimon plus 2000 DP to make more aggressive lines of play. If you wanted, you could try to use a card like Fire Rocket instead to just to be able to apply it as security attack +1, but I just figured Lightning Joust at worst will always give us that DP boost. And then the last card in the option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Gran del Sol. So Gran del Sol is just the big hard removal card for the deck. Your option slots you could kind of play around with and customize based on how you feel the deck wants to run and what you want inside of the deck. So I just settled with this as my option spread just because Gran del Sol is very powerful at interacting with suspending the opponent's Digimon, which we do have lots of different cards to benefit us doing so. And then we could return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of their deck. So it's just a really good card to bypass certain forms of protection to be able to get rid of large threats, and the fact that we could have this card cost 2 less as long as we have 2 or more suspended green Digimon, which is going to be our level 4 and lower Digimon for the most part, just make it a very appealing card to use for the deck. So even though this deck isn't going to be the most meta competitive deck, it's still just a fun casual deck to mess around with, and it does have some still very strong and interesting lines of play for us to take advantage of. So we are going to be running the Terriermon low end for the most part, just for the Rapidmon, more specifically to try to make him as efficient as we possibly can. We have a card to help dig him out. They're all Terrier by name to make him cheaper to evolve on top of any of them, and it allows us to utilize Calumon to shore up the deck's weakness in terms of the memory deficiency that we have when going up into our level 4s, just because our level 4s are going to be more expensive than your usual level 4. So it allows us to have that flexibility, while also us having access to Wormmon, not only as a level 3 free Digimon, but as a Digimon that's enabling DNA plays in case we have to end and pass the turn onto the opponent. Then that triggers Wormmon's ability to allow us to DNA. So it's just some really good high synergy for our level 3s. And then as far as our level 4s, these are the cards we're wanting to try to be as aggressive and controlling with as we possibly can. Shurimon's going to stop the opponent from blocking. We have Digmon to try to attack into the opponent's suspended Digimon, and Rapidmon is just the best green-based level 4 armor Digimon for us to utilize, while they all have the armor purge ability, so that way we could try to swing with them. If they do get deleted, then we get to utilize the armor purge ability to keep a level 3 body to try to go into a brand new level 4 to continue the pressure and aggression. But even if we do just want to sit on our level 4s and utilize the armor purge ability defensively to de-incentivize the opponent from deleting our Digimon if they actually can't, to then line up our DNAs, that's really powerful because we do have Kimeramon and Silphymon as really good DNA plays that we could use to try to further delete and control the field, while we do have RizeGreymon as another really good card to digivolve up into to be able to set up our tamers to make as effective and efficient plays as we possibly can. So we do have to be careful and mindful of his Digiburst ability because we do have to be aware that we are trying to use Magnamon X Antibody, so ditching the level 4, even though it it's not having any inheritable abilities might not be the best play depending on what you're trying to digivolve into past the RizeGreymon. So just be aware of that, and be aware of the fact that he is only going to be treated as a yellow card while on the field. So whether it's going to be in the inheritable or it's going to be in our raising hand or deck or trash, we do have to be aware that he's not going to be 2 colors all of the time. So that could be a factor into how you're going to go about building the deck. But again, for the most part, we're just trying to be as aggressive with our level 4s, casually go into our level 5s to help control the field, and then take advantage of the opponent trying to stumble and rebuild to then go into a level 6 to, again, apply more defensive pressure onto the opponent, where we could be aggressive and defensive with our level 6s. Then as far as what our tamers are going to be doing, they're just trying to help us gain some extra memory to make our plays as efficient, while trying to help DP reduce the opponent's Digimon to make them as weak as we possibly can, because we do have a lot of DP reduction in the deck already. And as I stated before, a card like Lightning Joust is just to try to help deal as much damage as we possibly can, as quickly as we can, to try to close out games. But for the most part, it is just a very aggressive deck that does have some good lines of play to be able to control the field when we need to utilize our higher stage Digimon. And then there's still just a whole bunch of other tech and tools that you could think about incorporating, all depending on what you're trying to gain out of the deck. So we do have another level 4 Armor Digimon that we could think about utilizing for the deck, because it can digivolve off of green, even if we're not digivolving it off of its intended Digimon for reduced cost, and Lydramon is still pretty decent at also interacting with trying to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, which is something the deck already wants to do. And then also, because we are already running RizeGreymon, we could think about running RizeGreymon X Antibody just to interact with the fact that we're already playing our RizeGreymon, in case we don't necessarily want to go into the DNA route, or we could remove the RizeGreymon if we want to go more into the DNA route. It just gives us that flexibility to run various different level 5s depending on what you feel like you actually want to support. And then as far as some alternative level 6 goes, you could think about running Achillesmon, just because Achillesmon already can digivolve off of the colors that we're playing around with. He has a nice built-in recovery ability if we're really low on our security, which we might be just because we're an aggro-based deck and we're not really running any solid defensive cards outside of our current lineup of level 6s. Then on top of that, he has a nice when attacking ability that's allowing us to try to gain some extra memory or DP reduce the opponent's Digimon, all depending on the current state of our security. Then, as far as some level 7s go, you could think about running Deathexmon because, well, it's Deathexmon and it could fit into virtually any deck, or if you want it to be a little bit more spicier, you could think about utilizing Omnimon Merciful Mode, just because, again, it could digivolve off of the colors we're already playing around with. Then, because we are playing in a lot of different colors and we are playing with armor-based Digimon, we do have various other armor-based options that we could think about running in the form of Fire Rocket, and if you really wanted to, you could even run something like a Plasma Shot, again, depending on the approach and option spread you're looking to gain out of the deck. Then, if you want, we do still have access to some really decent generic red options, so I'm going to be highlighting Fireball for some extra card draw, but if you wanted to, you could run some various other utility cards, or you could try to run some big hard removal cards as well. Then, because we are an armor-based deck, we could think about utilizing armor texture to try to swap it in and out of the armor forms that we need, and to take full advantage of the armor-based abilities and Digimon that we're going to be playing around with. Then, if you wanted to, you also could think about running X Antibody, again, just to try to make Magnamon X Antibody as useful as we possibly can, in the sense that we might not have the level 4s in his inheritable abilities to be able to use it, again, depending on the types of packages or sub-packages that you're going to be running. So let's just say you are running a heavier RizeGreymon engine, then you might have digibursted away the level 4, so that's where a card like X Antibody comes into play to try to shore up some of the deck's weaknesses. And then we do have some various options that we could run to try to make our evolutions as effective and efficient as we can possibly make it, just because sometimes right now the deck doesn't necessarily allow us to have the most efficient evolutions. So win rate 60% and green plugin could help shore up that weakness. Then we do just have some various other tech that we could think about running. So we do have access to yellow hard removal as well as red hard removal. Then going on the theme of armor form Digimon and the usage of our level 4s, we do have something like Awakening of the Golden Knights to be able to allow us to try to get up and use our Magnamon X Antibody as effectively as we possibly can. Then again, we do just have a whole bunch of various other utility cards in yellow that we could think about running. Then even though the card did get limited to 1, it's still a really good card at DP reduction and trying to set up our tamers, so Sunrise Buster is still just a very powerful card for a deck like this to utilize. Then we do have some other tamers that we could lean into, again, depending on the type of spread and abilities that we're looking to gain out of our cards. So we could think about running Yoli just because she's interacting with red Digimon to gain us memory, and on top of that, she's going to be deleting the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP, so if we don't necessarily have the ability to DP reduce them all the way to 0, then Yoli could still help us try to delete that Digimon if we can DP reduce it within her range for the use of our 2-color cards already. And then we do have some various other duo tamers to, again, help us gain some extra memory and utilize their abilities alternatively. So I'm going to be highlighting Tai and Kari just because it's already fitting in the color combination and pairings that we're already trying to play around with, on top of playing around with green as well. So this is a really good card to help us gain some memory while our security is low and while the opponent's security is low, and it's helping make our Digimon even more aggressive when we attack into the opponent's security by applying a DP debuff on the opponent's security Digimon. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.